WHO and PAHO also, he was former advisor to the Trump administration, and he is working out of Washington, D.C., if I'm not mistaken. I get enough, I hear myself in the earpiece. All right, so good morning, Paul. Dr. Paul, how are you? Hello, good morning.
Hey, good morning, how are you?
I'm fine. So where are you coming from this morning? Is it Washington or is it Canada?
No, right now I'm in the United States. I'm not in DC, but I'm in another state in the United States. And so just for full disclosure, so I worked for WHO in Europe prior.
Yeah.
And particularly germane to the pandemic, I worked for WHO Pan American Health out of Washington, D.C. Okay. And my present consultancy, I had to resign that consultancy to take up the position in the prior administration. So presently, I'm not consulting with PAHO.
Oh, you're not? Okay. You're not consulting with PAHO? Okay.
Presently,
okay. Now, I want to get into some conversation here because we'll have about 30 minutes, so we want to get straight to it in terms of COVID-19 and things relating to the vaccine and so on and so forth. And I think right now the conversation throughout the world, for that matter, is the vaccine conversation. And we have many different types of vaccines. So we have mRNA vaccines, and those are the ones specifically that are promoted as the somewhat of the Rolls Royce of vaccines. So could you explain to us the vaccines, the purpose of the vaccines, and if these vaccines are safe for everyone to take, or if people should be taking a precaution because they've been granted emergency use approval?
Well, thanks very much. First of all, I wanted to say for allowing me onto this call. And I'm talking as someone with expertise in COVID, more so as a Caribbean person, Trinbagonian, because I know the challenges that we're having in Trinidad also, and the deaths, etc. And it breaks your heart as a Caribbean person to see what's happening.
Yeah.
And so I decided, I would chat also and see if I could share some information. I also had the opportunity to work with some people at PAHO there in Trinidad, and I have great respect for the persons at PAHO that I've dealt with. The way I'm coming from this is that I find that the approach used by the government in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the prior lockdowns and the restrictions in society has not been optimal to the society, because what has happened really is, I'm getting straight to the vaccines now, but there's an important point I'm trying to make, is that with lockdowns, if you're not careful, you are actually putting the society in a much worse situation, because you are preventing the society from inching any further towards population level immunity or herd immunity. And the concept that you're going to vaccinate yourself out of the situation is a flawed concept. And many societies and many nations like Australia, New Zealand, etc., who have tried that concept, they're going to be in a lot of trouble in time, because you cannot vaccinate yourself out of this. Let me get straight to the vaccine, because that's a question you pose. So the concept about the vaccine, I mean, I don't know what level you want me to discuss this at. So essentially, the vaccine developers has created this. It's quite ingenious when you think about it. They developed this platform where your immune system is being asked to develop an immune response to a synthetic version of a part of the virus, the real virus. So the wild type SARS-2 virus, if you come into contact with it in the environment, and let's say the virus gets into your nasal passages, upper respiratory tract, at some point your immune system is going to build an immune response to the virus, and that is, let's say, that's what we call natural exposure.
Okay.
The difference between the natural exposure and the vaccine exposure here is a very important distinction. When your immune system is looking at the virus, it looks at the virus in its complete sense. So it looks at the virus, the ball of the virus, the spike of the virus, it looks at the nucleocapsid, it looks at the envelope, it looks at the enzymes in the virus, and it has many binding areas, meaning areas where the immune cells could, using layman terms, latch onto the virus and bind. We call these binding regions epitopes. It allows the immune system to develop a response. So the natural exposure is a very broad, comprehensive, durable, and robust exposure because it gives your immune system a full look at the virus. So any part of the virus, any particle, any protein, any antigen from the virus that your immune system sees in the future, your natural exposure immunity will be able to recognize it and neutralize the virus.
Okay.
The vaccine approach is that the vaccine developers decided that the spike protein, which is the spikes that you see, it's a glycoprotein spike picking off of the ball of the virus. That is the part of the virus that the virus uses to bind to a particular receptor on your cell. And I mean, I don't want to get too granular because, but I assume that whoever's listening will understand this. That spike interfaces with a particular molecule on the surface of your cells, causes some changes that allows the virus membrane and your cell membrane to fuse the content of the virus, which is the virus's genetic material, to enter your cell, and then the infection begins and the virus uses your cell's metabolic machinery to replicate itself.
Okay.
So the vaccine developers decided that they will focus on the spike and just inoculate you, but just the spike, so that they are asking your immune system in this inoculation that they're going to inject you with just the spike, and your immune system will recognize only the spike, build immunity to the spike only. So the idea is that when you get exposed to the virus in the wild, meaning the natural environment, your immune system will recognize the spike, and by assumption, the rest of the virus will be with it and will go through the immune response, etc.
Okay.
The problem is twofold. One, as I explained before, natural immunity exposure is very broad, durable, and robust, meaning the future exposure to that virus, and this is the idea, this is the way it works actually, is extensive in the sense that if you have natural immunity exposure and you clear the virus and you recover, the chance of reinfection is almost zero.
Okay.
Your immune system will be able to deal with any version of that, any variant of that virus in the future.
Okay.
And will be able to effectively neutralize it, etc. The problem with the vaccine is because it's only asking your immune system to develop immunity to just the spike, which sits on the viral ball. That spike is a hot spot. That's where the mutations are taking place. There's a S1 and S2 subunit right there. The mutations on the fusion domain, the mutations are taking place there. So you have to visualize it this way. If this spike is changing routinely. Then in the future, when the virus with a different spike confronts you in the environment, that spike is different now, and your immune system cannot recognize that spike. And remember, your immune system has only built an immune response to the spike, which is kind of a ridiculous approach in the beginning.
Okay.
When you sit back and you look at it, you ask yourself, why would the vaccine developers develop a vaccine and give your immune system just one target with a few binding areas? In short, that allows the variants that you are hearing about to blow past your immune system. So you are getting vaccinated. Your immune system is building a response to a spike that really does not exist anymore, because the vaccines were developed based on the Wuhan strain, February, March of 2020.
Okay.
The virus that is circulating today in the wild, as you know, has different variants now on the spike. The variation is actually on the spike. So now the predominant variant is the Delta variant. So when you get vaccinated, let's say if you went and took the vaccine today and your immune system worked as it should, and you developed immune response to that spike, that's fine. Soon, another variant will be circulating. When you are exposed to that variant in the wild, your immune system has only built an immune response to that spike.
Okay.
So then your chance of being reinfected is significant, because your immune system can't respond to the new variant. It has not built an immune response there. Okay. So in effect, I'm trying to say, we are vaccinating people with asking you to develop an immune response to a spike protein that does not exist anymore. And it's a very significant part of this discussion that no one is having. And that is why you are seeing so many so-called breakthrough infections across the world, because in effect, the vaccine is not working. It cannot work against the variants. Your immune system has developed a very narrow, spike-specific immunity, specific only to that protein on the viral ball. We would have wanted you to create an immune response to the 1,500. There are about 1,500 different binding areas on the virus that your natural exposure would have built immunity to. So any version of the virus in the future, the spike could have changed. Your immune system would have recognized other parts of the virus, and you would have remained immune and dealt with it. The second problem is, that's the first problem. The second problem is, we have found out post-vaccine across the world that the spike itself has some level of pathogenic behavior. Okay. In other words, this is the key. When the SARS-2 virus infects you normally, it is the spike protein on the SARS-2 virus, the actual virus, that causes the trauma and the subsequent cytokine storm and the vascular, the clotting, etc.
Okay.
So you have to ask yourself this: we are injecting ourselves with the messenger RNA, which is used to build the spike protein in your cells, that is expressed and presented on the surface of the cells to build the immune response. We are injecting ourselves with a mechanism to build the actual spike that is pathogenic.
Okay.
And what we are seeing, that's why the countries in Europe had pulled the AstraZeneca, etc. That's why Ontario had pulled it. That's why we are seeing the adverse reports in the United States. There are 400,000 adverse reports in the United States vaccine adverse reporting database. There are about 12,000 deaths. reported immediately post-vaccine. There are 15,000 deaths immediately post-vaccine reported in Europe. That's why we are seeing it, because the spike protein itself is pathogenic, and it plays a role in blood clotting and bleeding disorders, etc. So the reality, sir, is this. You have a portion of the population who is going to get vaccinated, and they're going to do fine.
Okay.
And thank God for that.
Right.
But there's a portion of the society who is going to get vaccinated, and they're going to get very unwell. They're going to develop blood clots, and some are going to die. Hence, we are saying, do not vaccinate our children with this. Why? Because in a normal vaccine trial, it takes about 12 to 15 years properly develop.
Okay.
From the conception of the idea to vaccine in the arms. Normally, when the vaccine is introduced into the deltoid, which is the injection site, the assumption is that the vaccine will remain in the injection site with some drainage to the local lymph drainage node. The immune response would begin there. The content of the vaccine would stay there. That was what was told to the world as to how these vaccines would behave.
Okay.
We have found out, based on biodistribution studies coming out of Japan, that the vaccine does not remain at the injection site. About 25% remains there, and about 75% enters the circulation systemically. And we've found out that the spike remains in the circulation for about 14, 15 days post-vaccine.
Okay.
And we've also found out that it's accumulating in very critical tissue, the ovaries in women, the testes in males, the spleen, the adrenals, etc. Here's the problem. The problem is the vaccine developers did not take the 12 to 15 years to study the harm part of a vaccine. When you bring a drug to market or a vaccine or medical device, it's not just to figure out if it's effective. You also have another part of that study. You need to demonstrate that it's not harmful.
Okay.
We have not done that with these vaccines. The vaccines got emergency use authorization, vaccines that are being used across the world without the data to demonstrate, or in our terminology, to exclude harms. So if you ask me a question as simple as this, if you said, Paul, this vaccine here, mRNA, the Moderna, Pfizer, whomever.
Right.
If I took this vaccine, am I assured that A, it will work, and B, I will be, it will be harmless to me? It will just do what it's supposed to do. I will become immune to this virus, and I'll go on my life. If I have to be honest with you, I will turn around and say, well, based on the reporting in the United States, based on reporting in Europe, and I don't have to just say, you are watching the media, you are watching the news reports that are coming daily.
Yeah, I'm seeing the reports
you can
from
see
CDC
their reports of
yeah.
harm post-vaccine.
Right.
I would turn around and tell you, I cannot tell you that you will not be harmed by the vaccine. For another vaccine, such as the measles vaccines that our children get, the full range of vaccines, the harm portion of the trials were done. So we know the extent of harm that could emerge, such as, bruising to the injection site, there's fever post-vaccine. There may be one rare occurrence of an adverse reaction.
Right.
That's why those vaccines were given regulatory approval.
Right. That's like yellow
fever.
That's like yellow fever and measles and things that you were given years ago. Right.
Exactly. So the due diligence was done so that you as a parent or you as an individual in society, when you take your vaccine, you can take it full assured that the regulators have done their due diligence and kind of protected you, hopefully, and they and they evaluated this for safety. It's a very simple discussion we have in here.
Yeah.
There's no evaluation for safety for these vaccines. And no one, your Minister of Health, your Chief Medical Officer of Health, the head of the CDC in the United States, no one can go on any media program, can write any paper, can make a statement to you that these vaccines are safe. They just cannot, because they do not know. That part of the clinical trial was not done. That is where people like myself, other researchers that we're working with, are saying, hold on, make sure that when you go in front of your doctor or the person who's giving you this vaccine, they properly prescribe to you the benefits of the vaccine to you versus the risks.
Right.
Our argument is that the vaccine rollout program is so insane, it's being done so crazily, that discussion with a person, the vaccinee, who's getting the vaccine is not happening. People are not being explained the potential harms to them, and they're just being, hey, roll up your sleeve and take the shot. That's not informed consent. Informed consent is you must be explained what are the benefits and the harms based on your risk profile, and then you make an informed decision. Everyone across the world today who's taken these vaccines, I would argue, have not been given proper informed consent. And that's an ethical violation based on the Nuremberg Code. That's a very serious issue. And the government of Trinidad and Tobago, the government of the United States, the government of Canada, they're blowing past this issue as though it's not an important consideration when it is.
Yeah.
Because at some point, your child or you who may take the vaccine, there may be implications to you. And then you're going to turn around and say, but no one, for example, people are not being told, the public is not being explained properly that these vaccines are investigational. They are experimental.
A local,
meaning that,
not to cut you, but a local doctor did send me a 68-page document saying that it's an investigational vaccine. And he was explaining the same thing you just mentioned with informed consent, and that all of this has been bypassed. But unfortunately, he doesn't want to be in the front line because, victimization and that sort of thing. But I read that, so I understand exactly where you're coming from, because I have seen a 68-page document that a doctor sent to me based on those ethics. But continue with the, you were now talking about the investigational drug?
Well, the reality about it is, the United States leads the world for good reason and sets the tone, particularly from a research and a medical point of view. And normally the FDA and these agencies, they do a decent job in protecting the public's health. I mean, they have all these conspiracy theory people with all of these different issues. Look, I just talking the science here. The issue here is that when a vaccine is given, when the vaccine developer or a drug maker invents something and creates a new drug and they do their trial, they need to submit an application to the Food and Drug Administration in the United States. I suppose there's a version of that in Trinidad.
Yes.
Where regulators there assess the statistical information, assess the methodology by which the research was done, make sure it's credible, and test for safety.
Okay. Paul, we have 5 minutes, but go ahead. I got 5 more minutes, but go ahead.
So the bottom line is that only when they do a proper assessment, a full assessment, they will then give that drug or vaccine full regulatory approval. That means that they are satisfied that it's effective and it's safe.
Right.
That word safe. In this case, the trial didn't go for the 12 to 15 years. It really only went for like 3 to 4 months in the United States. So they could not get full regulatory approval. So they went to the FDA and they got what we call an emergency use authorization, which basically meant, and the rest of the world has followed, use the United States emergency use authorization to give these vaccines to their people. what that meant was the FDA is saying that we don't have all of the information on the vaccine, but for the time being, let's give this on an emergency basis, and down the line, we will collect the data.
Okay.
That's a big problem because they gave the emergency use authorization without any safety data. We're coming back to the safety data. And more importantly, with that serious omission, we are giving people the vaccine without proper informed consent.
Right.
And it's not I'm saying it. If you look at the global data, you are seeing deaths and adverse events being reported across the world. So the question becomes, who? Is it somebody in your family? Is it somebody in my family who's going to take the vaccine? I may have one member of my family take the vaccine and they respond fine. Another member who takes it and is catastrophic.
Right.
And we did not study it. And that's what we're saying. We don't know who is this at-risk person. And
Right.
they are at-risk people.
Yeah. And that's the thing, and I've been making that point a long time, for months now, is that you do not know. I was telling people to go to the doctor, get a medical, but you see the problem is when you go to the doctor and you get a medical, all 99% of doctors saying, yes, go ahead and take the vaccine. And that to me is not logical, because you can't
No.
tell me that everybody qualifies to take a vaccine, because people have
No,
allergies,
because-
people have different underlying issues that may push
Look.
them in a direction not to take it, where they can't take it. Go ahead.
Look, what you're saying is very important. So let me get that point out. We learned very early on, maybe April, May, that COVID was amenable to risk stratification. And that meant that your baseline risk that you brought into the situation predicted your outcome, the severity of your outcome with COVID, including death.
Right.
So what we learned is there's a risk stratification with COVID, and you could target people based on your risk. And we knew that 99% of the public across the world who would bump up against COVID will walk away and be fine. The focus should have been on a 1%. Those elevated age people, elderly people with underlying medical conditions, morbidly obese people, even younger persons. And we knew that we did not need to vaccinate ourselves. We didn't really need the vaccine. We had early treatment, drug treatment,
Right.
that the medical establishment across the world knew existed. Antiviral therapy that was very effective. And the medical community, ministries of health, governments, for various reasons, have turned their back and tied the hands of doctors, including doctors in Trinidad and Tobago, so that these effective treatments that should have been used were not used. And for the 600,000 people that died in America that we have on the books, when we model it and look at it, based on the data that we have, we could have saved 550,000 people from dying had these people been given early outpatient treatment very early on in the disease sequence. You get infected and you have symptoms, start the early treatment. You wouldn't need a vaccine because you would clear the virus and you would then have natural immunity, which, as I explained earlier, is far more optimal and durable. Look, we have cases. There was a research group that recently published that they looked at people from 1918 Spanish flu, and they had blood from a group of survivors. And in about 2010, they published a paper that was below the radar. Nobody paid attention to that, but I went back and I found it. And what it showed was within their blood, there was an immune profile and response that if you reintroduce the 1918 virus to their blood today, the immune cells in their blood was triggered and it came alive. It meant that after 100 years, they had an immune response. They had natural exposure to the flu in 1918, and they still responded today, their blood. And that's our argument. Why did you pushing people, especially children, to get vaccine when we know basic immunology 101 that if you are naturally exposed and you get through it and clear it, and we have early drug treatment to help, you will have the type of immunity that will be lifelong, no question. You are pushing to give people a vaccine that has, one, safety issues, and two, the immunity conferred by it is very narrow and spike specific, and actually is vaccinating, inoculating you against a spike protein that does not anymore exist. I need people to wrap their heads around this. The vaccine was made on a variant of the spike, the same variant term that's being used today. There's the Wuhan variant, the initial parental spike. That's what the vaccine was based on. That is long gone. We have had hundreds and thousands of mutations and variants. Right now, it's the Delta. Your immune system from the vaccine will not be able to respond. That's why you are seeing all of these breakthrough cases. Half of all of the vaccinated people in Israel and UK, etc., are becoming reinfected because the vaccine is not working. It cannot work theoretically as well as practically. It just does not work.
All right, well, Paul, I want to thank you for joining us this morning, and I want to have you on again. I'll message you after the show,
No
and we'll work out a day to have you on, because there's some other parts of this that I wanted to get through. But I know you wanted to go through detailed explanation, so I want to thank you for that, and we will be in touch. All right? Thanks a lot.
No problem.
Nice. So that is Dr. Paul Alexander on the inside there from the United States of America.